that Last Supper. He had taken up bread and gave thanks for it. Then he took the cup, the new covenant in his blood, and poured it out. He was in prayer about the events to come, and his soul became deeply grieved, and he began to sweat blood. His capillary blood vessels, which feed the sweat glands, began to break down, and blood built up in his lungs. His skin became tender more and more as the blood from his vessels began to mix with his sweat. That alone could have killed him, but that's not what caused his death. Right then, he could have called on a legion of angels and would have been delivered. Practice of the Passover feast spread to Africa. It was a time of great deliverance and a reminder of God's deliverance from sin and bondage. African heritage had great respect and regards for the Passover. We even had our own synagogue in Jerusalem. We gave up everything during the feast. Year after year, from North Africa to Jerusalem, we traveled to celebrate the feast. As a little bitty boy, Yeshua and his parents traveled to celebrate the Passover year after year after year. During this season in Cyrene, there were times of drought and high gusts of wind lifting up dust from dry surfaces. Dust would be lifted as high as 20,000 feet into the air. Simon left the dusty, stormy Cyrene and headed to Jerusalem to experience the offering up of the sacrificial lamb. Yeah, he heard of his healings and miracles. When he left home, he had no idea that he was going to play such an important role in history. This particular day, just in from Africa, on his way to the Passover feast, minding his own business, he simply stopped to see what was going on. That stop changed his entire life. Simon of Cyrene was snatched up by the Roman authorities to assist in the crucifixion. Jesus, Yeshua, had fallen several times with the cross, and Simon picked it up and carried it. Those streets were narrow and lined with throngs of men from all nations. The sanctuary was so noisy, it was covered with pens of sheep, goat, and cattle. Sellers shouting the grades of their beasts, oxen yoked, packaging of doves, potters stacking clay, and ovens heated for roasting the Passover lamb. On every corner there were booths of wine, oil, salt, and other spices for preparing the sacrifice. Places designated to change foreign money for temple shekel. There was always noise during the Passover, always, but this time was very different. The throng, unusually violent, had their fists raised in the air. Some carried clubs while others carried babes. Some eyes bucked while others were filled with tears. Without warning, Simon of Cyrene was grabbed by his cloak, and an unusually large fist stared him in his face. Without hesitation, he was compelled. Black men have had their share of carrying loads. Are you willing to shoulder a burden? Simon said yes.